1974, when I attended my first cryonics gathering. This was in a home in South Florida. There were about 15 people there, and they had life insurance in place and contracts and nothing else. We were dependent on some volunteer labor, sparse donations. We had no equipment, no expertise. We frankly had no idea what we were doing. This is pre-internet. If you were in an isolated part of the country, you had a hard time reaching other people. And what I was shown that day, and I left that meeting trembling, the bathtub. Yeah, one of our members had a big house. He said, well, if one of us goes down, the strategy is we'll put them in the bathtub with crushed ice, and we'll call the funeral home who said they might help us, or they might not, or we'll figure out what to do. That is the state of art in South Florida, the state of art back in 1974. I left that meeting trembling, thinking I expected there would have been some facilities and some knowledge, but there just wasn't. There just wasn't, which motivated me to establish the first cryopreservation facility in the southeastern United States. And I was able to do this, number one, by renting an industrial park bay and moving in so I wouldn't have to pay rent otherwise, getting a job that let me work 80, 90 hours a week, and with overtime, I was able to establish a cryopreservation facility that had on the right, a temperature control cabinet where I could at least store the patient in dry ice before we found some place to encapsulate them, and I was able to buy equipment that would enable me to do at least the emergency medication administration and a perfusion. And this is an article in a longevity magazine that talked about my facility in South Florida, and my technology was the use of an embalming pump to run DMSO glycerol through the patient. I had a refrigerator filled with chemicals to put into any patient that would come into my cryopreservation laboratory. And thank goodness my technology, my skill set as an embalmer was rendered obsolete a few years later by someone who doesn't get enough credit, frankly, for moving cryonics into the surgical field, the professional medical field. This is Jerry Leaf, and I was at a conference like this talking about my embalming skills, and Jerry took me aside, a total gentleman, and says, I hate to tell you, Bill, we're bringing a thoracic research team now to do cryonics. You know a lot about embalming, but we're surgeons. And I said, thank you. Thank you for upgrading the technology, because I knew embalming a patient with DMSO glycerol could be done a lot better if my skills were better. So my skills were rendered obsolete, and thank goodness they were. And just think about where we are today. Alcor has a nice big building with lots of room for internal expansion, and a surgical operating room suite instead of an embalming room, and lots of capsules with patients stored in them. When I went to that meeting in 1974, I thought they might have some capsules. We didn't even know where to buy them at that point. It was really that scary. And you look at the number of Alcor cryopreserved patients. Starting in that 1974 period up until the early 1980s, there really weren't many patients. A lot of what happened, HIV, that boosted the level a little bit. Eric Drechler's book, Engines of Creation, Ray Kurzweil's books, and you can see there's lots and more people cryopreserved, but for about 10 to 12 years, it didn't seem like anyone wanted this. And of course, lots and lots of members. When I signed up, I think there may have been 45 people around the world with some sort of financial arrangement to be cryopreserved. There are now thousands of people around the world. Alcor has lots of members, lots of patients, a track record of keeping people cryopreserved, and they have lots of money in the bank. Money in the bank to make sure they can cover their overhead costs, cover patient care expenses going forward. So this is a big improvement, something that a lot of new people might think it had always been there. Well, we had nothing back in 1974, and we now have a lot of good technology, a lot of good real estate. The Michigan group, they have a building that they own free and clear. They've grown so much they had to buy another building because they are housing lots and lots of patients awaiting future arrival. They needed more space, so they bought the building next door so they can continue growing their organization. And they too have members around the world waiting to be cryopreserved in the event of their death. And of course, they also have many, many patients in cryostorage, and they also have money in the bank, something we didn't have back in '74. Money to maintain patients, money to deliver the services that they're contractually obligated to do. And the suspended animation group that we support, they have their primary offices in South Florida, Southern California, and they have mobile operating room vehicles so they can go anywhere in the United States, do a standby, stabilization, transport, washout. Field vitrifications might be around the corner very soon. This is the inside of these vehicles where we can do a lot of the work that would require a surgical suite. We can do it in a mobile operating room. There's a vehicle in Southern California that Suspended Animation operates. They too can do remote standbys, all kinds of cryopreservation work in the vehicle and not have to worry about where they're going to go. And of course, we learned about Switzerland having their own building with patients, cryopreservation facilities in a country where I was told at one point it would never be accepted. In fact, Switzerland and other countries tried to evict me several times. They wanted to throw my money out, take it to some Caribbean island, had to go and fight them in court, and I won. It's illegal to evict people as much as some people wanted to back in those days. And they promised me, even though I won in court, they said, there will never be a cryonics facility in Europe. We don't accept this sort of thing. Well, there's one right outside of Zurich right now. So it's kind of a little vindication for us. And they also have a mobile operating room vehicle. And from what we saw, it looks like they have about 3 of them. So they can go anywhere in Europe and do a stabilization, transport, field vitrification, all of these incredible improvements, the incredible work being done in China, Australia having their own cryopreservation facility. I learned a CryoRoost has made a comeback, one in South Korea. So a lot's going on right now that I'm being enlightened about during this meeting, and I hope to enlighten everybody. But it wasn't always this easy, and this is where I'm going to talk about some of the legal challenges that were very significant. 1988, Alcor was being attacked by 2 government agencies. The sheriff's and the coroner's office raided Alcor, arrested the employees and the visitors, and alleged that we murdered Dora Kent and that we may have murdered other people in cryopreservation at Alcor, so they wanted to thaw out and autopsy all of the cryopreservation patients. We were accused of grand theft, murder, any charge they could throw at us, they did. In addition, the California Health Department stated that cryonics was in of itself illegal. And their rationale is there was not a box on a disposition permit to check off cryopreservation. You could check off cremation, burial, entombment, even sea burial, but not cryopreservation. So the logic of the health department is if it was not specifically permitted by the legislature, therefore it must be illegal. So we had 2 battles in California to go and wage battle in court. In addition to battling the FDA on the East Coast of the United States, they were trying to put life extension out of business. And yes, people were handcuffed. Mike Darwin, when I talked to him about this, he was handcuffed on a 45-degree day, put into an air-conditioned car because they wanted him to tell them where was Dora Kent's head. And let me compliment Mike Darwin and everyone else at Alcor who was arrested. Nobody revealed what the sheriffs wanted us to reveal. So we had to go into overdrive. We had the coroner, the sheriff, the health department simultaneously against us. And the legal experts we consulted with said, well, you can't win. The coroner by statute has absolute authority. You just can't go into court and have a judge go against that. And even our own attorney said, we'll take your money, we'll do our best, but you've got no chance of winning this. We said, well, I think we do. Saul Kent, myself, others, we felt we had an opportunity to win, and our Alcor people, they were facing life in prison for murder, and yet they all stood together. Nobody went and, well, nowadays people just rat, if you know what I mean. They flip on everybody else to avoid a jail sentence. In this case, there was no cooperation whatsoever. What we did do is put together a lawsuit seeking an emergency restraining order to prohibit the coroner from autopsying Dora Kent or any other cryopreservation patient. So what our strategy was at that point was to provide medical experts who would state that Dora Kent and the other patients had a reasonable chance to be revived, and therefore, if you thaw them out and autopsy them, you destroy that. What I did is I called former medical examiners that I knew through my funeral home connections, and I was able to get them to provide affidavits stating that the coroner did not need to autopsy Dora Kent's head. They had her body, they autopsied that. There was no need to autopsy her brain to figure out how she died. died. So this is what we brought into the courtroom. And we also had nursing home personnel stating she was dead when you took her out of here. So how do you murder a dead person? This is what we threw into the courtroom case, and then we also argued the constitutional right that Dora Kent had to be cryopreserved for future reanimation. Well, the coroners, they didn't want to do any work. They felt they had absolute authority, so they go into court and just told the judge, we have the authority to autopsy these people, and judge, you can't do anything about it. And they allege again that we murdered Dora Kent, so they had to autopsy her body so they could press charges against us, and they also alleged we were a threat to the public health. Reason being, we had a lot of HIV patients stored at Alcor, and somehow at minus 325 Fahrenheit, they felt that virus might leap out of that capsule. So these are the kind of allegations the coroner made against us. Well, we won the temporary restraining order, and that's relatively easy to win, because had we not won that, there would have been irreparable damage. So the judge gave us a couple weeks to put together the whole case so he could hear it again. But we got tremendous publicity. This was the nice thing about all this. We got international publicity about the fact that our little cryonics group with fewer little resources somehow took on the government of California. We won the first round. We won the first round. And again, that publicity garnered new members from Alcor. People realized we were legitimate. We weren't trying to just take people's money and put it in our pocket. So this helped. This is Saul Kent on Larry King Live. We got a lot of information requests on that. So then came the court hearing for the permanent injunction. This is much, much harder to win, and we did win. We enjoined the coroner, maybe for the first time in legal history, from autopsying Dora Kent or any of the other preserved patients at Alcor. We enjoined the coroner, and we won this unprecedented victory. The coroner lost the case, and this sets legal precedent. If a coroner or a medical examiner attempts to do anything like this in the future, we can take this California case and use it as a way to potentially diffuse that horrible situation. Judge prohibits the autopsy of Dora Kent or any other Alcor patient, and the coroner was thrown out of office for squandering a heck of a lot of money on this litigation, which no one in Riverside County thought should have been brought in the way that they did. So we've got case law precedent. And the reason I think that's so important to talk to this group is 50 years from now, there could be an event like this. You should know there's a website that has all these legal documents, so we can once again go into court, use the same strategy, and hopefully come up with the same outcome. So the monetary judgments against the coroner, well, in today's dollars, because they arrested people at Alcor for no reason whatsoever, they paid in today's dollars about $238,000, and then they also seized Alcor's emails, but they didn't have a search warrant for that. So that cost them over $80,000 in today's money to paying us, which is one reason why they were thrown out of office. They spent a whole lot of county money fighting us, and then they had to pay us for our attorney's fees. It's very rare to win attorney's fees, but that's how egregious the judge felt their activity was. So to put this timeline in perspective, December 11th, 1987, Dora Kent, Saul's mother, enters cryostasis. January 7th, we're raided. Alcor is raided by the sheriff's office. We're accused of being murderers, stealing equipment, which we didn't do, and they wanted to do autopsies. We initiated litigation 4 days later, and I can tell you very few of us slept. We worked around the clock to prepare these legal documents to go in to fight what was considered an impossible battle. So we run the temporary restraining order, which again is relatively easy to win, but the big victory was the permanent injunctive relief that prohibited the coroner of Riverside County from autopsying Alcor patients. Now the cost of this and the health department litigation, over $1 million in today's money. In addition to the work we did, over $1 million of attorney's fees. It's a shame we had to do this. Now that was the victory against the coroner and the sheriff's office. We still had the health department who said cryonics simply was illegal. Couldn't be done. There was no box to check off. They refused to certify death certificates or issue disposition permits. So we were essentially breaking California law by cryopreserving people instead of cremating them or burying them. So we found an AIDS victim who was signed up. They act as plaintiff on the lawsuit that we filed against the State Department, or Health Department, and we won. We won a stunning victory at the Superior Court level, where the judge ruled that we had the right to be cryopreserved, and that the health department had to figure out how to certify death certificates and disposition permits that would adhere to how we're doing disposition, which is cryopreservation. But the health department didn't stop there. They filed an appeal. They felt an appellate court might rule in their favor. And that, again, involved a lot of money, a lot of time on our hands, fighting against the health department, seeking to put cryonics out of business, to make it a criminal act to do cryonics. And we won at the appellate level. And again, this is case law precedent that can be used in the United States and even other countries to show that this is something legitimate, nothing illegitimate at all. We've got the constitutional right to be cryopreserved, and it upheld the correlation of cryonics in the Uniform Anatomical Gift Act, which we're seeking to solidify more now with some litigation we're working on. And I want to give credit to the people on this screen. Jerry Leaf, Saul Kent, everyone on this screen, and many that I really couldn't fit on there. Everyone stopped what they were doing to work on this case. Each person did their own little piece of work. Like Keith Henson worked on the email theft that the coroners did. Dave Pizer filed his own lawsuit because he was just a visitor that day to the facility, and they arrested him just for being in the building as if he was an accomplice to murder or something. So these legal challenges, we had no chance of winning, supposedly, but we fought back. We fought back hard, and we had to fight back smart, and we prevailed. But there's always new battles to win. And, well, this one was especially difficult. It took a lot longer. We had to spend more money. We were attacked in the U.S. By the Internal Revenue Service and also the Charity Board in New Zealand. And what we had planned to do is put an endowment fund in New Zealand for the purpose of growing it to reanimate everyone. It was for anyone who was cryopreserved to have money there. The value of it back then was over $50 million. Right now it's a lot more. But the problem number one is New Zealand rejected our charity application, and they then said, cryonics has no legitimacy, we don't want you in our country. And then the IRS said, we want those endowment assets. They tried to seize our money. So we had to fight the IRS in the United States and the New Zealand government, and it was quite a situation. 7 years of litigation, a lot of money spent, but let's see what happened. Now, New Zealand stated that there was no legitimacy to cryonics, so they revoked the anti-aging charity that we had there for like 11 years to do aging research, because they also considered aging research illegitimate. In their mind, if you want to do something about aging, you build more old age homes. That's the solution to the problem of aging. Get more places to store these people. So they revoked our aging charity, and then they denied our cryonics charity. And 5 years of litigation in New Zealand, and the charity authorities asserted that there was no science behind cryonics. Believe it or not, they were willing to say there's nothing of scientific or educational value whatsoever, and therefore get the heck out of our country. We don't want you here. And you're also immoral people trying to do something that has no science and taking people's money. So this would have created a lot of problems for groups around the world had we lost this, so we therefore had to fight it. So this is how the New Zealand Charity Board argued their case, and they put a lot of effort into this. They wanted to win. They wanted us out of New Zealand. We weren't leaving. So they were basically saying, since everyone can't afford it, it's not charitable, it's never going to work, there's no useful knowledge to be advanced. And look at all the science we talked about so far today. They claimed none of that was going to happen. And they also said there's no education value to doing cryopreservation research. And again, just what you learned today totally disproves that. And then he came up with a unique term, in parentheses, current science. No current science behind what we're trying to do, and therefore it is something that should be thrown out of our country. And of course, criticism about cryonics on websites, you can find that anywhere. So for those numbered 1 through 6, this was their argument: cryonics is illegitimate. This was their argument. Well, we presented huge volumes of data showing it is was something that is very, very scientific. It included affidavits from prestigious scientists around the world, published papers, videos. It even descended into biblical arguments. They were saying this is against God's will. And we cited all kind of passages throughout the New and Old Testament showing that raising the dead is considered a good activity. Nothing wrong with it at all. And yet they were trying to use the Bible against us. We used it back against them, and we prevailed in that regard. So they were determined to not allow a charity to exist in New Zealand that had anything to do with cryonics or age reversal. They viewed them both the same, as things that couldn't happen, had no value, and shouldn't be part of the charitable scheme. So our strategy was, again, submit lots and lots of documents substantiating what we're doing, demonstrate the societal benefit of cryopreserving tissue, cells, organs, even if we couldn't bring back people. We went into the charity commissioner and litigated internally when they were making inappropriate allegation, filed all kind of appeals. We initiated litigation in the high court, and we exposed a lot of errors that they made. And frankly, we left no stone unturned. This involved tremendous amounts of time, a lot of money in attorney's fees as usual. But we couldn't lose this, and we did not lose. We prevailed. September 30th, 2016, the New Zealand High Court ruled that we had the right to exist in New Zealand, and we had the right to practice cryonics. And the judge was so upset with how pathetic the charity board arguments were that he took an unusual step. He removed the case from their purview. He said, you people cannot figure out right from wrong. I'll decide. I'm the judge. I'll decide whether or not it's current science and if they're allowed to do this. And he was very favorable towards us, so we've never had a problem in New Zealand again. And he was very critical of the charity board using these terms, accepted academic discipline, the current science, by saying whatever those terms might actually mean. We couldn't quite figure out how can you define current science and say that this group is not practicing it. And the judge also ruled that, of course, there's a lot of educational value. You do a lot of research, you learn. You learn in a way to improve technology. So the charity board alleged there's no useful subject of study. It had no right to be in New Zealand. It served no useful purpose. But we won. The judge wrote incredibly beneficial verbiage. This is available again on websites in case we have to litigate somewhere else. You bring up the New Zealand judge, you bring out the California judges, the appellate judge ruling, and it gives you a big leg up. It's case law precedent that benefits us. It doesn't hurt us. This is the website, Charity Services, that details all the litigation that went back and forth, and it details and shows the victory that we had. So the importance of this victory is you get this British Commonwealth, and this case can be used anywhere in the British Commonwealth to legitimize cryonics. Couldn't afford to lose this, and judges will respect cryonics more when they see other judges have heard cases and ruled in our favor. And it protects some victory. It protects us a little bit against the IRS, but we still had to battle them. And it actually worked that way. A case in the UK, there was some interference by the UK government. As soon as we brought the New Zealand victory to the attention of the UK government, they said, okay, that's fine. It's obviously legal. So it worked within a very short period of time to assist in the cryopreservation of a patient in the UK, which is why we needed to prevail in New Zealand. Well, that was New Zealand. Still battling the IRS. The IRS wanted all the money, and they felt that we were not running our C3 properly, so they retroactively revoked our tax exemption. And what that does to a charity is it can take all their money, because they can go back 6 years and seize everything you have. And what you have to do at that point is we had to sue the IRS in order to reverse that retroactive revocation. Now, this was a very intense battle. We were able to reach a preliminary settlement agreement in 2016. We finalized the settlement agreement in 2018. Our attorney says, you guys won an incredible victory here. And I said, well, we paid $10 million in attorney's fees, and it's 5 to 9 years of my time dealing with this. I don't consider it a victory at all, but we at least didn't lose our charity. We didn't lose our charity. We're still here. Our life extension group started in 1977. 2024, we're 47 years of age. And since our inception, we've contributed lots of money to biomedical research initiatives. We continue, as you know, to fund research, $7 to $9 million a year on cryonics projects, $2 or $3 million in aging research. It's the purpose of life extension, is to fund biomedical research, and our eventual goal is to fund reanimation research to revive all of us, to revive every single cryopreserved patient. That's what our purpose has been. To give you a history, though, of our corporate existence, because I know this confuses people. 1977 started off as a little cryonics facility, Florida Cryonics Association. Name changed in 1996 to Life Extension Foundation. It actually changed in 1980 with another nonprofit, but we've juggled names quite a bit. But 1996, Life Extension Foundation, and then 2017, new name, a Biomedical Research and Longevity Society. And this is what the IRS wanted us to do. They didn't want life extension in a charity's name, so that was a relatively easy way for us to alter our name, because we've let everyone know we have a new name, and we're now a C4. We're no longer a C3, which I appreciate, because the C3 rules and regulations very strict, and the way we're funding research, the C4 is more appropriate. The initial endowment, well over $50 million. I'm hoping it'll grow to many hundreds of millions, if not more, for the purpose of reanimation research, and then pay for the reanimation of everyone who's cryopreserved. These are the projects that we're funding in 2024. The bulk of the money goes to 21st century medicine at this point, resurgence biomedical sciences. I'm just going to go down here relatively slowly. Suspended animation, we continue to subsidize. They don't make any money. It's hard to make money in cryonics. We fund the Stasis Foundation. We want to continue their work, because that's where many of us are going to wind up being stored one way or another. Advanced Neurosciences, that is Ashwin de Wolf's group, by the way, and Rudolf Goya, cryonicist in Argentina, does incredible work with a very small amount of money. Alexandra Solzing, she's going to initiate her project in 2025. Takes a while sometimes to bolster research. This is a project that Aubrey de Grey helped put together. It's going to enhance our ability to improve what we do there at 21st Century Medicine. We donate small amounts of money to Alcor for their hardship fund, so people don't have any money, or had money but don't have it right now, and also money to the Cryonics Institute. So this is what our Biomedical Research and Longevity Society contributes on an annual basis to various cryonics organizations, and then we also contribute money to aging research beyond what you're seeing here. So our ultimate goal, sometime within the next 10 years, I can't tell you when, is we're going to focus most of our resources on reanimation research. We've got a lot of our supporters right now cryopreserved. We need to get them back. So we want to focus that effort and most of our money on reanimation opportunities. Well, the last 5-6 years, lots of favorable publicity. The study at Yale where they revived a pig brain after 4 hours. It motivated a lot of people. And then, well, look at this, 46,000 years, a worm in permafrost is brought back to life. And in the media, it's picking up on this, and it's generating favorable coverage in science, prestigious coverage in science, which may be the most well-respected journal in the world as it relates to science. And once science publishes something, Forbes picks it up. Lots of people read about cryonics. Harvard doing work with human livers and brain tissues being revived without damage. You can see these are relatively recent headlines, 2024. Of course, some of the headlines very much exaggerated, but the Daily Mail talking about the Chinese scientists moving closer to bringing people back to life. Now, I think that we're moving closer to better cryopreserving them. Bringing them back to life is another matter. But we're getting some nice favorable publicity. National Geographic wrote up about organisms that freeze during the winter and then come back to life. And I'm going to play a short little video and take a water break to incentivize people who think that the dead can never come back to life. Well, for some species, they do it all the time.
Frogs that were caught last night. They spent the whole winter on the forest floor, and most of that time they were frozen solid.
The freezer is set at 8 degrees below freezing, roughly the temperature of the ground in winter. In a matter of hours, they'll be hard as rocks.
We have fully frozen Rana sylvatica wood frogs. They're probably 50-60% ice now. and their hearts are stopped, their brains are flatlined, their limbs can't be moved, they would be broken off. Yet they're still alive.
But the most amazing thing is the fact that the wood frog comes back to life. Over a couple of hours, it makes a miraculous and complete recovery. Immortality might be ours if we could manage to do the same.
I love that last sentence. Immortality could be ours if we can do the same, which is exactly what we're all attempting to do in this room. Cryopreserve like those wood frogs do. Now, the experts, they're always pessimistic for some reason. I don't know why, but heavier than air flight was considered impossible. And we picked this up just a couple weeks ago. New York Times in October 1903. They said it's going to take 10 million years to figure out how to fly. Really, really amazing. 2.5 months later, well, they figured out how to fly. So when people say something cannot happen, it's impossible, I've done the impossible on the legal front certainly many, many times, and in other areas as it relates to science. I think Greg Fahey has done the impossible, and many other people in this room. And after 1903, just 66 years later, they're on the moon. You talk about exponential advances. All we need to do is make a major improvement in cryopreservation, and all of a sudden, we very well could perfect it. So I'm going to do a brief overview of our Stasis Foundation. This is where I believe most of us will be stored until we're revived. This is property in Comfort, Texas. This is the safest geographic location in the United States. We have about 855 acres of land, very well protected. We don't have to worry about earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes. We don't have to worry about what you have to worry about in most parts of the country. And what we do with Stasis, we've got this property. We own it free and clear. We are able to pick it up at a relatively good price. A couple overpaid to build it, went kind of broke, got a divorce, and a judge forced them to sell the property to us for a lot less money than what they thought it was worth. So we own this property free and clear. We do have money in the bank to maintain the property and do a little bit of operations on it, and we plan to put a lot more money into it over the next 10, 20 years. And what we seek to do is achieve fully reversible cryopreservation. So we'll be doing revivification research on this timeship property with a lot of patients there too, so that the scientists have some motivation that those capsules, there's people in there waiting to get out. So do your research and hurry up where you can. So what we've done, and this suggestion was made by one of our members, this guy worth about $1 billion. I put on this presentation, and he asked me, is there anything in writing that states that all the nonprofit cryonics groups have equal access to the Stasis property to build a large storage facility at their expense, but the Stasis would provide the land and a lot of the overhead costs? So we sent these memorandums of understanding out to Alcor and to the Cryonics Institute and to the European group, and we asked them, please file this away because it provides a detailed plan to determine when do you decide to move your operation to Comfort, Texas. And right now, in my opinion, it's not appropriate for Alcor or CI to do it yet, but in 5 years, 15 years, it very well may be. And the European group, they read and they accepted the MOU. They indicated they'd like to build a facility on the timeshare property, which is great, so if they're able to raise the money, they'll put up their little bunker to store patients that they cryopreserve in the United States, and Alcor and Cryonics Institute and any other nonprofit group has the same right. Essentially, we want to keep the Stasis Foundation owning the property and then leasing it in perpetuity to the different cryonics groups. It protects us from against a lot of frivolous lawsuits. We don't want all the eggs in one basket. So by the Stasis Foundation owning the property but leasing it in perpetuity, it protects us against a lot of litigation that we might not want to deal with. This is, by the way, fantastic property. They've had presidents of the United States hold fundraising events in this building. Sometimes it looks like this when it rains. Just beautiful manicured property that we don't keep it perfect manicured now because we don't need to. We're looking for self-sufficiency. It's just an impressive building. And this is what the property looks like from one view. And somewhere there will be an Alcor facility and a European biostasis facility holding lots and lots of patients, lots and lots of property to do that with. And when we had a meeting there with about 30 cryonicists, one of the comments made by one of them is, because this property is so impressive, he said, for the first time, I think this is really going to work. And it's remarkable. People will look at infrastructure, they'll look at buildings and feel that's going to get them back to life. That's just the way some people think. This person's a fully signed up Alcor member. He thought it might work, but having access to this property gave him more confidence. So it's one of the reasons why we bought it, and it's in a charitable group. It's not owned by anybody. So you go to where we were in 1974, it was scary. It really was, and it took a while to get up to that surgical suite, technical expertise, the kind of improvements that are being made you've heard about today. And we've got buildings with lots and lots of patients. There's more buildings around the world. We've got companies, groups that can do cryopreservation, standby, stabilization, transport, field vitrification being worked on, all kind of good things happening. But our Life Extension Group, for those who don't know, we're the world's largest consumer-based anti-aging biomedical group. Consumer-based because our emphasis is on consumers, not on educating doctors. Other organizations do that. And Life Extension was born at a cryonics meeting. Saul Kent, myself, we talked about it. Some people said, we'll put up a little bit of money to start it. And it started. And we accomplished exactly what we wanted to do, raise lots and lots of money to support lots and lots of research. So for those who are attending this meeting, really interact heavily with each other. You never know what you might be able to put together. But the interactions at cryonics meetings with 12 to 15 people resulted in our Life Extension Group. This is our corporate headquarters in Fort Lauderdale. We have another building this size in Las Vegas. And we're growing. More and more people realize if you want to live longer, you better take care of yourself. Now, this website should have my entire PowerPoint presentation, and all those documents, all those legal documents should be on this website. If they're not, I think Karen and some others will make sure they get on there, because we want to maintain all the legal documents fully accessible by anybody so they can save a couple $1 million in attorney's fees, because we've already spent the money. So that's my presentation.
Bill, thank you so much for everything you've done and your efforts. Your will and perseverance are unmatched, and we wouldn't be in the great position we are today without your efforts and everybody that you mentioned that contributed. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I wanted to ask you, with all of your experience and the path and journey you've been on, do you foresee what the next set of challenges might be to get in the way of our efforts to be cryopreservers?
Well, I learned at the young cryonicist meeting we call Teens and 20s yesterday that there's a movement in France right now to remove that particular law that bans cryonics, and that would be another legal achievement. They had an achievement where they can do cryopreservations in British Columbia. There was also a law in the books there. But there's a girl here who's spearheading that litigation in France, and that would be the last country that we know of that has a real law that specifically prohibits cryonics, which could have happened if we lost some of those legal cases in this country. So that may be the next major victory, I hope. But as far as legal issues, they come up often with people who set up revival trusts with lots of money, and then their family, the greedy people, they want to steal the money of their father. It's really terrible. Your grown children are self-sustaining, and they want to challenge trust funds. We've prevailed in most of those cases, though in some cases the judge allocates enough money for cryopreservation, but gives some money to the family when they don't deserve it. It could be, though, trying to attack the trust funds that are set up to support research in perpetuity.
Also, congratulations. This is so inspiring to the world. I know that you have done in the USA, and that we are trying to replicate in other countries, because the legal system in the Anglo-Saxon countries is actually more friendly than in the countries that have the Napoleonic Code or the Roman laws, like Spain, France, Italy, Portugal, Greece, where even the Catholic Church controls everything. So cremation was not allowed until about 40 years, was not allowed in Spain or Italy. And in the Muslim world, still there is no cremation. Today, no cremation in the Muslim world. Anyway, so now we are fighting that. Now that cremation is legal, euthanasia is legal in Spain, for example, we are trying to push for cryopreservation, which is the best thing. Forget about cremation, forget about burial. So we are on the legal process, and it's taken me longer than I thought, to tell you the truth, and then we had the pandemic. But we are keep on pushing on this and collaborating also with our friends in France and in Italy. So we are on this battle, and we are following your example. So thank you for all your inspiration. No question. Thank you.
And just to clarify, that's enlightening to me. It was illegal to do cremation in those countries. A pope issued an edict at one point that the bodies of the faithful should be buried. Cremation is forbidden, and that's why those laws are there. That's interesting.
My name is Bernie Siegel. In 1974, in Miami, when you were at that meeting, I was graduating from Miami at the University of Miami School of Law. And I want to take a moment to congratulate you, Bill, on behalf of the legal profession of the world, for providing so much revenue to the starving lawyers. It's amazing. Besides, you've done some other things as well. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Bernie.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Now, it would irk me that the IRS has taken a stance against a charitable organization using the name Life Extension, and I wonder what their reasoning was. Are they taking now a substantive position on whether extending lifespans is a viable charitable endeavor, or is it something more mundane, like there's a commercial entity named Life Extension and they don't want too close an association with it?
Yeah, that's the reason. I'm going to just go into a few details over their inappropriate revocation. Back in 1992, FDA had viciously attacked us. We had very little money. I literally borrowed $5,000 on a credit card to send to help construct a cryopreservation research facility. About 25 other cryonicists put money into it. And that facility eventually got taken over by the Life Extension Foundation. And the Life Extension Foundation subsequently put, at that point, $35 million into it. My $5,000 unfortunately stuck on the books as being an owner, but you'd put like 50 zeros before you get a penny, because my $5,000 was diluted by $35 million. IRS, being the people they are, they put that up in big headlights that I set up this charity, and I had an interest, a commercial interest in the property. And it was simply an accountant's mistake by not removing my name. That was it. But when we showed the math, we said there was zero value to this, and impossible. I mean, 21st century medicine loses money every year. It's a research lab. So that was one thing that is kind of a dirty trick the IRS did. But their reason was, you're correct. The Life Extension Buyers Club funds all this research. They did not want a Life Extension Foundation to confuse the public with the Life Extension Buyers Club. So it was kind of an easy concession for us to make. The name of the charity really was irrelevant. We still have a name, Life Extension Society. There's another C3 that we have. So if people want to write tax-deductible donations, they can do that. And C4s can take other kind of donations. But yes, that was the main reason. We had to change our name because they didn't want the public to be confused with a for-profit organization.
Hi, Bill. So, couple totally unrelated questions. First one, I did notice that the doers for CI and Alcor were made of completely different material. Alcor was chrome or something of that nature, and CI seemed like a more plastic or polymer material, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? And is that kind of an inconsistency, and is that being further researched? And then the other question is, and this kind of follows up with the question or concern I kind of had about kind of overpopulation issue, and whether you believe that there will be a concern of running out of space, and if we are prepared for that, and we have, if we have kind of looked onto the future long enough to kind of keep that in line as well.
Okay, the purpose of us purchasing that timeship property, the 855 acres, is to be able to have enough space to store lots of people. Literally, we could store millions of whole bodies. If you take the neuros into account, it could be tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, if the space is utilized. That Stasis Foundation is in a perpetual trust. The property can only be used for reanimation research and cryopreservation storage. No other purpose. We got that on the deed. Doesn't mean someone could go in court in the future and try to remove it, but we put a deed restriction on that property to make sure it's only used for cryopreservation purposes. So we're not worried about running out of space in the near term. We got more than enough space at this point. The capsules that Michigan uses apparently are very efficient. They're able to maintain a lot of people at a low cost, but I'm not an expert at that. So if you ask some of the people like Max Moore here and James Arrowwood, they may be able to tell you the difference. Greg Fay probably can tell you the difference also, why those fiberglass capsules are used by Michigan, but they seem to be very efficient. And their prices are low, which I appreciate, because I've referred a lot of people to CI because they just don't have the money for Alcor. And those people are grateful that there is a CI so that they have at least a chance of their loved one coming back.
Is liquid nitrogen going to be an issue with respect to being able to supply it going down the road?
Liquid nitrogen is a byproduct of manufacturing. It's very inexpensive at this point. If they stopped making it as an industrial gas, we'd simply buy our own machine and start making it ourselves. It's just more efficient now to buy it really cheap as opposed to having our own machine.
We have time for a final question. So if anyone's been saving a really good question, now is your time to shine.
Okay, group, I'll be here for the whole weekend. Feel free to ask me any questions.
Did we have the question? Okay. Sorry.
What do you foresee in the future in terms of future legal victories for this field?
Well, we're on a moral just cause here. These are nonprofit groups. We are advancing science. Right now, science is getting some good recognition, especially on the regenerative medicine side. If you pick up a newspaper, The Economist, Wall Street Journal, et cetera, judges, other people are reading, people are going to start to grow younger maybe, and that science is starting to accomplish the impossible. So I don't see legal challenges occurring until family members start saying, my father took all the money and put it into cryonics and the children are starving. That would be an issue. So that's one I could hypothesize right now.
Okay. Very quick.
Yeah. Ray Kurzweil has said that he expects not only this to work, but that reanimations could be possible in the 2050s. So what do you think about his forecast, the 2050s for reanimation of cryopreserved patients?
I've always been a pessimist. I anticipate it's going to take many hundreds or thousands of years. That's my opinion. And that's why I set up these organizations with lots of money to sustain people for hundreds or thousands of years. If they're managed properly, if they can beat inflation with their interest income, there will be many billions of dollars emanating from what we're doing. I encourage other wealthy people to set up revival trusts, set up charitable trusts, and there may eventually be enough money there. If we have to wait hundreds of years, big deal. I mean, to the cryonics patients, as you know, once you deanimate, it doesn't matter how long it takes. You come back. It could be 10 years or 1 million. It doesn't matter to you. But look, I hope what Ray Kurzweil said is true, but I'd rather take the pessimistic side of it. And
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much.
okay.